Hello and welcome to another gameplay episode by the Trinisphere where Timmy, Johnny, and Spike battle over all things EDH. I am Shannon, the Johnny/narrator, and I'll be narrating this Zendikar Rising matchup where we're playing monocolored commanders from Zendikar Rising. We have Timmy on Charix, the Rising Sea. I, the Johnny, will be playing Ashaya Soul of the Wild, and Spike will be playing Taborax Hope's Demise. Our guest is also a Spike, will be playing Moraug, Fury of Akoum as well. Let's dive right into the gameplay. Alright, playing first is Timmy on the green playmat. I'll be playing second on the blue playmat. And then our guest playing the Star City Games playmat will be playing third. And then our Spike will be wrapping up that play rotation in the last spot. So Timmy's playing first are always dangerous, but as long as they don't ramp, we should be alright. I do get a ramp on turn 1 with an Elvish Mystic. Passing over to Matt, the guest Spike, playing Akoum, or playing Moraug. We'll see if there's going to be a bunch of rocks. There is an Ancient Tomb on turn 1, which is pretty good, so Matt being able to go into turn 2 with 3 mana. But no follow-up signets or rocks, which is good for us. So our Spike is going to draw, play land, and go, passing to Juan. Juan's going to play an Arcane Signet, so everyone is ramped but our Spike, which is pretty funny. But playing mono black, it's not exactly easy. Alright, for my turn 2 play, I'm going to throw down a Scoot Swarm. Card is busted. Landfall, make an insect, but if you have 6 or more lands, instead make a copy of Scoot Swarm. So they start to multiply very quickly. Alright, Matt is going to throw down a Crucible of Worlds. That's a good indicator that there's a lot of fetches in that deck, or maybe some MLD. We don't know. We'll see. Over to Hogg. Hogg going to play a Swiftfoot Boot. So possibly going to try and kill people with Taborax. Just swing over the board, maybe make Taborax, sack a bunch of clerics to make Taborax huge, and then try and one-shot people. We'll see. Juan's turn 3 play going to be a Charix, the Raging Isle, a 0/17, a pretty humongous Leviathan Crab wall. It also can pump itself for some amount. So it can be dangerous later in the game, but right now it's just an enormous wall. I'm also going to throw down an Ancient Tomb, trigger my Scoot Swarm to make a 1/1 insect. And then I'm going to throw down a Nissa Vital Force. So this is one of the few Planeswalkers that can ult the turn after it comes into play. So I'm going to roll that up to turn one of my lands into a 5/5 creature with haste until end of turn. And then next turn I'll be able to roll Nissa down and get an emblem that gives me the ability to draw a card whenever a land enters the battlefield, or I play a land. So really good for me, and I don't think there's much that can get over top. Maybe that Taborax, but Hogg would have to play some extra mana in order to equip the boots to give it haste. Matt is going to draw play land, go. So in that weird spot of 4 mana production, I guess below some of the bigger, cooler cards in hand, and not getting the rocks that they need. So Hogg is going to play a Liliana Heretical Healer, so pretty good. It's going to be also indicative that there's some reanimation strategies. You'd expect that out of like a cleric sacking deck anyways, but that one's pretty good. Juan's turn 4 play, and tapping with 5 mana, or playing 5 mana. It's going to main phase and into the Royal. Gonna bounce that Planeswalker back to my hand and draw a card. So Juan does also play with that Planeswalker, so is very aware of the fact that if it's not dealt with, that emblem is just going to be too much value to deal with. Alright, so considering my options, I don't think there's going to be a counterspell coverage here, so let's get Ashaya down and get that online. So now Scoot Swarm is online as well. I have, because it turns my creatures, or my non-token creatures, into lands, I now have 6 or more lands. So when I play this guy as Cradle, it's going to trigger Scoot Swarm. Then I'm going to tap that for mana, and start dumping as many 1-drops as I can. Now each of these come into play as a force, triggering Scoot Swarm again. So I get to trigger Scoot Swarm another 3 times this turn. And because it's making copies of itself, it's basically doubling its production every turn. So I think I end the turn with 16 Scoot Swarms, but I try and bookkeeping use die to represent that, and somehow I accidentally delete 2 of them. At the end of my turn, Matt is going to use Valakut Awakening to draw some cards, discard some cards out of hand and draw some cards. And for 5 mana, paying some life, he's going to play a Storm Cauldron, pretty strong. I think realizes that my deck uses tapping of creatures to generate mana as a combo strategy, so he's going to try and lock me out of the game by preventing my creatures from tapping for mana, or when they do, they bounce to my hand. Hogg's turn. Having to deal with Storm Cauldron's tough. Taps 2 mana to play a Blood Artist. Those 2 mana obviously bounce to hand. Getting to play an extra land, because Storm Cauldron gives you an additional land drop as well. At the end of Hogg's turn, Juan is going to opt, bouncing a land to hand. And then drawing for turn. So Storm Cauldron starting to really put the pressure on all the other players. And it's going to pass to me while Hogg's Daughter is going to swoop in and drop some dinos on his battlefield to give him some better defense. On my turn, I'm going to tap Gaia's Cradle to float a ton of mana. I don't even know how much. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to spend that much. And it's going to bounce to my hand due to Storm Cauldron. I'm going to use that mana to cast Shamanic Revelations. And Juan's going to respond by anticipating here, looking for a way to stop me from drawing, I don't know, 14, probably 20-some cards here. Does find a foil after anticipating. Going to use foil, discarding an island and another blue card to free counterspell that Shamanic Revelation. I'm going to follow that up with a Nissa Vital Force. Still have a bunch of green floating in my pool. I figured that'll be a good follow-up draw engine after the burst draw spell was countered. But Juan proves to have a second counter spell. Surprises me there. Is able to counter the Nissa Vital Force. So now I'm out of draw engine, so I gotta play with what I got on the battlefield here. So I'm going to replay Gaia's Cradle and float it again, bouncing it to my hand due to Storm Cauldron. But this time it's going to trigger Scoot Swarms to make an additional, should have been 16, but it ends up being 14 Scoot Swarms. Going to float it again and then play it a second time this turn because I get an extra land drop through Storm Cauldron. So that's going to make 28. And then it's about time to go to combat. So 28 Scoot Swarms in reserve. I'm going to go to combat and swing Ashaya at Hogg, 7 Scoot Swarms at Juan, and 7 Scoot Swarms at Matt. I'm also going to throw a Scythe Leopard at Hogg. So Hogg's going to put in front of Ashaya, who's like a 10-10 right now because it doesn't count the tokens. Going to put the Blood Artist in front of the Ashaya and take the rest. Matt's going to take 7, and Juan's going to block 1 of my 1/1s. Now, at second main phase, I'm going to tap all of my green creatures and bounce on my hand because they're forced, so they get bounced by Storm Cauldron. I'm going to replay each of them. This is going to trigger Scoot Swarm 3 more times, doubling my 48 to 90, then the 90 to about 200, then the 200. It should have been around the 400 range, but we just said, somebody shouted 378, so that's what we wrote on a piece of paper. Doesn't really matter at this point. It's just a lethal number of 1/1s just entered the battlefield that they have to deal with. On to Matt's turn. Matt's going to play a Koth of the Hammer and pass. So does not have a board wipe that can deal with this. Everyone's kind of like trying to work together here. Hogg casting a nice Whisper to draw 2 extra cards, hopefully to find a board wipe, but losing 2 lands in the process, bounce to hand. Doesn't look good. Gonna roll up this Liliana here. I don't want to lose a card on my hand, so I'm going to bounce a land to my hand and discard it. I'm basically all in on my board state because I lost both of my draw engines this game. So I would much rather, I could pitch lands here because either this board wins or it loses based on the next turn here. Juan is up. Juan going to also try and find some kind of board wipe here. Does not. Pass his turn to me. I'll go ahead and do the phases and go to combat and swing at everyone with roughly 100 Scoot Swarms each. Everyone declares that they are in fact super dead. So a quick first game, so let's go ahead and dive into a second follow-on game. I'll be releasing that today as well, so keep an eye out for it. It should be dropping pretty soon now. Thanks for joining me, Shannon, the Johnny, for this quick Zendikar Rising gameplay. Great minds brew alike.